College sports now from Indianapolis. The road ends here, rolls on, as we've got Evan Miyakama from evanmiya.com. Evan, it is great to finally meet you. We have done this before, but not in person. This is a home game for you. You live in Indianapolis. What's it like having the Final Four in your backyard?
It's great. I grew up in Indianapolis, but I have not, as an adult, actually experienced it, other than the COVID tournament, in the way that Indianapolis should do the Final Four. So getting to see it in this setting, and it's been awesome. So
for those that don't know, Evan is a PhD in statistics. Okay, he is a learned doctor. Okay, what does that mean? As far as like the basketball world goes, Evan, you're like empirically breaking down all of the data that we get from college basketball. Okay, so when idiots like me are like, well, what about the eye test, or what about what these teams look like? You're like, well, actually, I've got like data here and analysis, and I'm running computer models and simulations and like all that stuff. So when you distill the season down to the 4 teams that we have, and I've got some notes here, all 4 of them were in your top 7 at evanmiya.com. There are no surprises as far as you're concerned, right? The fact that we have these 4 teams playing in that building on Saturday.
No, not at all. I think going into the tournament, I actually predicted the most likely outcome was that we would have 2 1 seeds in the Final Four and then a collection of other teams who were kind of in that ballpark. Michigan and Arizona have been 2 of the best teams, arguably the 2 best teams on the course of the season all year. And then obviously UConn and Illinois have been kind of in that next tier for most of the season. So it's not a surprise that they were able to be here as well.
Yeah, when you have to deal with what we saw in the Elite Eight with UConn and Duke, and everybody's like, oh, like the shot, the moment, whether if you're a UConn fan, it's the comeback. If you're the Duke fan, it's the collapse. Like, how do you process that in your world where everything is based on like data and just like numbers as opposed to like emotion, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love doing college basketball data analytics, because there is so much unknown in college basketball. That's why people keep coming back to the sport. When we look at the preseason, there's 25 teams whose fans think they're good enough to win a national title, and we don't actually know how it's going to play out until we start seeing some results. If you look at the NBA, you don't need an analytics site to tell you that Nikola Jokic is an amazing player, that LeBron James is one of the best players of all time. In college, we don't actually know how that's going to play out till the season goes. And even when we get to March, we still don't know which players are going to dominate, which teams are going to dominate. So there is some predictive stuff in there, but it's the uncertainty of the tournament that makes it the best tournament in all of sports, in my opinion. So for me, I'm not just cheering for, well, this team was supposed to win and they won, so haha, my model's great. It's like everyone, that's not what we care about. We care about the slight variation, the uncertainty, and then having Final Four moments like what we had with the UConn-Duke game of Duke was the better team on paper, but there's a reason why UConn hung around and ultimately they were able to win that game. That's what makes the sport so great.
So here's what I care about. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. Tomorrow night we got 2 basketball games. Have you run the simulations? Like, what are the computers say? What does evanmiya.com say about the 2 games that we have? Illinois, a 1.5-point favorite over UConn. Michigan, a 1.5-point favorite over Arizona. I mean, they're coin flip games on paper, but you've run the simulation. So, like, what do you expect to see tomorrow?
When I'm putting a matchup prediction in place, I basically have an algorithm that looks at all of this different information about how good is your team, but also how do you match up stylistically with the other team, offense, defense, but also how do you play up to elite competition, how do you play in faster-paced games or slower-paced games. So when you put all that stuff into account, those 2 games are both supposed to be pretty close games. I predict the UConn-Illinois game to actually be pretty much a coin flip. I have Illinois favored by 0.3 points.
Wow.
And I have Michigan actually as a little bit more of a favorite by about 3 points.
Okay.
Now, again, there's still a 37% chance that Arizona wins that game, and they would still be the comfortable favorite against whoever they played in that title game. But that's kind of where I have those matchups. And with the UConn-Illinois side of things, part of why I have that game so close is because I think Illinois is the better team on paper on the course of the season, but UConn has shown an ability all season long to play really good basketball in their toughest games against the best opponents. They play up to an elite level. We certainly saw that against Duke. We've seen that against many of the other games. They've had some spots this season against lower Big East competition where they've not really shown up. But in big games, Dan Hurley gets his squad ready. Illinois has not been quite that reliable in those types of settings, so that actually does matter a lot in this matchup, and why I think it's pretty much a coin flip there.
Is that a frustration for you that there's no, like, that there's no, what's the word I'm trying to come up with, like a factor, like there's nothing calculable, that's not a word, but about like what you, like the toughness of UConn, variable, that's the word, variable is the word. There's no variable for, like, the fact that these guys just won't die, right? Like we saw that against Duke. Does that frustrate you in the math world that you can't really compute something like that?
I mean, oftentimes if there is something that seems to be, we're not measuring it currently, I go to the workshop in the offseason and say, can I try and measure that? And that's where the opponent strength adjustment part comes into play. That is a variable in my algorithm. So, you know, without that, I wod probably have Illinois as a 2-point favorite. But because of how much better UConn plays in their best games against best opponents, and the fact that Illinois has, I think they're like 4-7 against top 20 opponents at evanmiya.com, that does play a factor into, it is a variable in the formula, and part of why ultimately I think it pretty much could go either direction.
So you do agree, though, in terms of like the what the odds makers say, that it should, you know, not that it should be, but Illinois slight favorite, Michigan slight favorite. You rate them maybe 2 or 3 points more than Vegas.
Correct. Yeah, I would still say that Illinois is the most likely team by a hair to beat UConn, and I would say Michigan is the more likely team to beat Arizona. And I actually have, you know, in the Arizona-Michigan matchup, I think part of why it's so fascinating is because both teams all season, especially once we got to the point when they were 12-0, 13-0, and some of the last high majors to be undefeated, their fans start chirping at each other, saying, no, we're the best team.
Yeah.
And they've not played each other during the season. And so, and everyone, you watch Michigan one day and you're like, oh my goodness, that's the best team in the country. And then you watch Arizona and you're like, well, no, that's the best team in the country. Now we actually get to see it unfold on paper. I can't wait for it. I think the difference in this game for me, if I'm picking one thing, is I think Michigan's going to have the best player on the floor in Hartzell. I think what he has grown into as the season has gone along, and Dusty May giving him more responsibility, I think he is just a little bit higher than everyone else in this game on both sides, and that's kind of where I give Michigan the edge there.
With Yaks, like, he was a transfer from UAB. I don't know, and maybe you don't know off the top of your head, but, like, as a player in college basketball, you rated everybody last year. I think Cooper Flagg was number 1, right?
Yep.
I went on a limb there. Where was Yaks rated last year when he was a Blazer of UAB, right? Because we talk about the transfer portal a lot. You know, talent development and recruitment still matters quite a bit. Give Dusty May and his staff credit for being like, hey, this guy down at UAB, like, we need him and he can be a star in Ann Arbor.
He had the skill set at UAB that few other players at that level have in terms of the elite efficiency, scoring, rebounding, playmaking. I think one of the stats that was going around a lot last year talking about Cooper Flagg was that Flagg was one of 2 players in the country leading their team in every statistical category. The other was Hartzell.
Yeah.
Now, last offseason, when you looked at my portal ratings of how good I projected every player in the portal to be, Hartzell not only was my number 1 transfer, he's the highest rated transfer I've ever had in my database. So it was predicted that he was going to be able to make that jump as well as anyone can. You look up now, and I think he's arguably one of the top, 2 or 3 players in the country this season. So it's pretty much played out exactly like, at least statistically, what we thought was likely to happen.
On evanmiya.com, I'm just going to assume that March was like the highest traffic that website gets all year,
Yeah.
right? What is it like for you coming to the Final Four where this is the heart of the college basketball world, right? For this week, NABC is here. Anybody who wants a job in basketball is here. People who already have a job in college basketball are here. People are giving lectures and talks. If I understand this correctly, you did something at NABC this week. You did a presentation. What was that like? And then as a follow-up, like, where is this headed with analytics in college basketball? Because people in this sport are kind of late to the party, and I feel like there's a sea change here.
Yeah, I mean, I spent most of my year behind my computer, if you will, kind of making sure all my stuff is working. And
in the lab, you've been cooking.
In the lab, yeah.
Yes,
and of course,
yes.
I'm talking to coaches all the time. And so the Final Four is great because everyone's here, and it's my best opportunity to network with coaches as well as people in media who are also, like yourself, who are regularly using my stuff and whatever. So it's just a really fun 5 days for me to show the face behind the spreadsheet, if you will.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of,
Yeah.
I'm able to talk about this stuff in a way that's understandable, and so that establishes trust there. But for your point about analytics, I think the analytics has been growing exponentially in its adoption in college basketball over the last 5 to 10 years. I think what has really accelerated that in the last 1 to 2 years is the apparent need every team is realizing they have to be really smart in the way that they are making roster decisions in a sort of front office capable type way that professional teams are doing. Because there's now money on the table, it's not just saying which of these two players is better, it's which of these two players is better and worth the money we would spend on him based on what they're asking for. So there is so much inefficiency in the market that it's not just about, okay, can we rank these players? It's, okay, well, if we take this lesser guy than this other one, but he's half the cost, our budget ends up going further. And so that's what makes the adoption of analytics and stuff like what I do super, super valuable for teams, because I have all of this data to suggest, based on your box score statistics, your player history, your recruiting profile coming out of high school, your impact on team performance, all of this stuff is going to matter, and here's how good of a player you should be next year. And then, for teams who work with me closely on this, it can translate to an actual NIL value estimate for all of these players that gives them a baseline for how much they should be worth in the current market. It's honestly crazy how quickly all this stuff has become prevalent in college basketball almost overnight, but that's the age that we're in now.
So a ballpark here, because maybe it's a fluid number. Maybe you're hoping that it grows this week. But, like, how many Division I basketball teams? There's 365, I believe. Mm-hmm. Nailed it. How many of those teams are working with you, like, intimately when it comes to those roster decisions?
So at a high level, there's 120 Division I staffs at least who have a subscription to my site in some form. Now, there's a lot of different levels to that, and that's also based on what I can track based on the logins and stuff that they use. I'm sure there's some other accounts I'm not even aware of. At the much more like front office suite type level deal, I have a product that's exclusive for teams and GMs. There's about 25 or 30 teams. I just launched it last year, and there's 25 or 30 teams who are using that and access to my NIL data and talking to me regularly, and that's a huge important part of their pipeline of making these roster decisions, which has been really cool.
I think that's fascinating, one, because I can't understand it, okay, but also two, in terms of, like, I just love talking about, like, the future of these of sports. Like, where is this going? Like, we didn't used to play Final Fours in football stadiums. Now we do, because you can sell 60,000 more tickets. That helps, right? Give me I'm gonna let you go on this one. Give me an under the radar player this weekend. We've talked about, everyone knows about the stars, right? Give me an under the radar guy, either based on your metrics or just in general, that you think, hey, this guy could be a factor in a team cutting down the nets on Monday night, if they're hitting shots, but just somebody that not a lot of people are talking about.
Obviously, every team has many of those players. That's why their rosters are so good. A player I've loved all season for his skill set and how he has fit into his role and being asked to doing what he's been asked is Tobe Awaka at Arizona. Awaka is one of the greatest rebounders that we have seen in this sport in years. Like, going back to Oscar Tshiebwe type numbers. Nice. on a per possession basis. And he's been that going back to his time at Tennessee. He could easily be a dominant big at another school. But what Arizona asks him to do is come in and play 16 to 20 minutes a game, just dominate the glass, wear teams out defensive, on the inside. And then at times, if some of the other bigs get in foul trouble, there have been games this season where all of a sudden he's putting up 15 to 20 points, but he's not actively trying to aggressively chase that unless the team needs him to. He is a much better player than the role that they've asked him to play, but he does that to perfection, in my opinion. He's so physical. He just beats people up. And so, if you're Michigan and looking up and Mo Krivas is subbing out and then Tobe Awaka's coming in, it's like, God, give me a break. This guy is just as physically intense as Krivas is, and he should be starting a lot of other places, so I love his game. Yeah, that's a great pull. I mean, Arizona's been a wagon, all year, but even in the tournament, Michigan has been too. Saturday night should be blockbuster stuff. Evan Miyakawa, evanmiya.com. He's smarter than you, folks. Go to the website, check out his stuff. Great to see you, buddy. Enjoy Indy this weekend. Appreciate it. Thank you.